Okay.
Hello everyone, welcome to Stan the Wine Man TV. I am your host, Stan Rattan. This is episode number 9, and it's an epic episode for me because I have my first official guest, Gordy Rawson from Chatter Creek Winery in Woodinville. And I have an audience and a cameraman, Mike Sheridan from Northwest Totem Cellars. In fact, we're at his, get your hand out of there. Jesus Christ. Anyway, you can swear on YouTube, by the way.
Okay.
Did you know that?
I did not.
Oh, good.
They don't take it off. They don't bleep you.
Perfect.
I think there's 7 words that Google uses that you can't use on YouTube, but I don't think Christ is one of them, especially since it's Christmas. That has a word in it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, Gordy Rawson did an event for me yesterday, because today is Friday the 13th in Mike's Wine Bar and Cafe in downtown Friday Harbor. A cool shop, by the way. If you're ever in Friday Harbor, it's across from the parking lot of King's Market, which you can't miss. You could miss Mike's Wine Bar and Cafe if you weren't looking really hard, but he did an excellent job. Sorry about the echo, but we thought this was the best place to shoot this episode. So Gordy, you worked with David Lake for how many years?
Total of 13 years. 12
to 13 years. Now, for those of you who don't know who David Lake is, he was an iconic winemaker in Washington State. He passed away, what, about 4 years ago?
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a huge loss for the state, but he made some excellent wines. Gordy was his cellar master?
I was a cellar master there.
All right, so you want to tell us how you got into this Chatter Creek business?
Well, while I was working at Columbia, I decided that I wanted to break into making sparkling wines. There was an area in southwest Washington around Battleground, the center area, that people were growing Pinot Noir, and I was into sparkling wines, so I tried making wines from there and had some success, and slowly moved towards starting Chatter Creek in '96. So I was making sparkling wines. I was still working at Columbia at the time. No one had any problems with it because I was making sparkling wine and everything else was still wine there, so there wasn't any conflict at that point. So, you know, the first couple of years, '96, '97, were all sparkling wine production. And then in 2000 I left Columbia and started adding still wines to the mix.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sparkling wine, that's kind of a difficult way to get into the winemaking business. My understanding is sparkling wine is one of the more difficult wines to make.
It is a very difficult wine in that you get a lot of time to mess with it. So when you're making white wine, you're standing in the field and you can get some sense of the sunsets of the grapes. You can kind of go, okay, this is what I think this might taste like once it's fermented out and finished. Sparkling wine, you have to go, well, in the field you go, what will the still wine taste like, the base wines, and then you go, what will this taste like after it's fizzed up? And I add a dosage, and that dosage has had the chance to melt with the wine. So it's like long distance target shooting. You know, you just hope that the wind carries the bullet in the right direction and hits the target at the end of the day.
Okay.
So it takes a lot of faith, and it's different from still winemaking in that there's an awful lot of finesse involved in the wine. So you're not making a wine, you're not trying to make base wines that will carry the day by itself. It's really finessey. I'm trying to think of how to really put it, but you know, you're not making big bold wines. You're making wines that allude to things.
Okay.
So that when they're blended together and pressurized, and your dosage and the reaction of the sugar and the dosage and the pressure, blah, 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 you eventually come up with this a very delicate wine that's more about nose, it's more about delicate, light flavors. And you know, you make pretty wines, not bold wines.
Pretty. There's a word I like.
You've not heard it before, have you?
Don't you think Mike's pretty? Isn't he a pretty boy? You know, he's got just that real pretty look to him. Probably from all those years as a swim coach.
It's the angelic, you know.
You know, Mike, I have to tell you, I told you not to wear your Speedo for the shooting.
That's why I'm not on camera.
Be a rebel. So, Mike, have you ever tried sparkling wine?
No, but I will interject that Gordy is one of the most fun gentlemen to work with in Woodinville as a young winemaker. He's helped me out in certain circumstances, and it's kind of an agricultural community, and some people play that role, and Gordy is certainly a community member. And so I've had the pleasure of knowing Gordy for years in Woodinville and have enjoyed that, and I'm still not going to go on camera and show you my Speedo. So.
Did you hear he called you a young winemaker?
I appreciate that. Yeah,
that's great.
Here, where's my wallet? Look at that.
So what
50 out.
So I just, what was it like working with David Lake? I know he's kind of an icon in the Washington wine scene. Was that really a big help for you? Did that launch your career, do you think, as a winemaker?
It certainly filled it out. David was a consummate gentleman and a very centered, very easy person to work for, and a very fair person to work for. I mean, that's not to say in 13 years there weren't some disagreements, but he was very easy. Told you what he wanted, nice black and white stuff. But he also included you in all of his decision making. So part of my job not only was making the wine at Columbia for David, but also to play devil's advocate every time we went into the lab to start to blend something or balance something. So the enologist and I would be constantly going, well, you know, David would be like, well, let's try this. Yeah, that tastes pretty good. We go, are you sure? Do you think maybe we might be able to do something else? So it was, I had a really, a lot of interaction with learning the craft, or I'm always at a loss for the word. Anyway, how to go about making wine, not in a nuts and bolts way, but in the, like, learning the craft of writing or the craft of acting, where I mean, there's people that burn out real fast and there's people that just stick with it for a really long time. And you have to balance, you have to know how to balance, you know, your work with your artisanal desires.
Okay, well, that brings up a good question. I always wonder about this. I've asked a couple of different winemakers. Where do you, as a winemaker, say, okay, this is what I like in a wine, but I realize that, you know, 80% of the people that are going to drink this probably aren't going to like it.
Right.
Now, how do you satisfy your artistic side with your commercial side, where you know you need to get that wine out? It doesn't do you any good to sit in your warehouse. You need to get it out there and sell it.
Well, I mean, that's the hard part about winemaking, especially for a small winemaker, because you do have to constantly go, well, yeah, I got to sell this stuff. And you know, I've learned to work with it over the years. I like paying my bills. So I have, for instance, what I've done is started making my art wines, if you will, for the wine club. So we have the tasting room in the wine club as an outlet for those couple barrels of something that's blended completely different than otherwise. I probably should have brought up, we're going to taste the Merlot. We tasted the Merlot last night. I should have brought up a bottle of the Reserve Merlot and showed you the difference between the two of them, because the Reserve Merlot is rather geeky, and the mainline Merlot is straightforward, and kind of not as expected, but a straightforward blend. And you know, I made 200 cases of the mainline Merlot and 50 cases of the Reserve. The Reserve is only available through the tasting room, which is why it didn't show up.
Okay. Well, that answers that question. I mean, I always wondered, because there are some winemakers out there that geek it up on every bottle, and I don't know. Some of them get a huge following and they don't have to worry about it. Other people, I know they struggle with selling their inventory because it is just a little too much on the geeky side.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've always wondered how those guys get by with that too. But, and when I figured that out, then let the geek loose. Loose the geek!
We're going to taste 3 of Gordy's wines. Now I did my top 40 wines under $20, and your Sauvignon Blanc made it in that list. I don't do non-vintage wines because it's really hard to tell when they change over.
Right.
You know, I mean, the blend could change. I could put it in a list and all of a sudden it's a different wine. I noticed, well, even for instance, Rob Griffin's Cab Merlot is non-vintage, and it'll change from the first of the month to the middle of the month because he changes blend in that process. So that's the only reason. Otherwise, I would have put your blend 105 in there. I really like that wine. Let's get started here with your 2012 Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
Rinse. We don't know how good Mike washes his glasses. Gotta be careful.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the water here earlier.
Yeah.
You wash glasses?
See, Gordy wants to bring these bottles
rinse them
because
with
you see
wine.
most winemakers
Yeah,
pour for their customers.
Right.
But this is my show,
So he gets to.
so I get to pour.
Yeah. Well, we could do it like the way a couple of wineries wash their barrels too, where they just simply take the wine out, take the barrel upside down, and let it drip dry.
There you go.
I think
Can we
should
get a
do
good
that.
shot of that bottle there, Stan?
Oh yes, thank you. Am I right?
You're good enough there. It's about as good as you're gonna look. There we go.
So this rolls in about 17 bucks, right? Retail?
Yeah.
17 bucks retail?
That's good.
All right, excellent. So there you go, the Sauvignon Blanc. Now I'm really picky about Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
I get tired of that insipid, watered down stuff that comes out of the Central Coast. And those Napa Valley Sauvignon Blancs, no acidity, there's nothing to them.
Well, in making this wine, I tried to harken back to Sauvignon Blancs that I remember from the early 80s, before everyone got crazy with it. And it was a nice, pleasant wine, maybe a little grass, good acid, a lot of tropical fruit. That's what I remembered before Sauvignon Blanc started going crazy and you had brass or you had oak barrel, sloppy, you know, trying to make a cheaper version of Chardonnay. So I was really trying to get a nice centered Sauvignon Blanc. Good fruit to it, good acid balance.
Middle of the road.
Kind of a middle of the road without, I mean, I'm tired of getting bitch slapped by Kimmy Crawford. You know, I just, and that ilk of Sauvignon Blancs.
Well,
I didn't drink Sauvignon
You
Blanc
can always
for
have a
10
little
years.
grapefruit juice if you want to be.
Yeah. So, you know, and like I told people before, I have a yard and I have a cat, so I don't really need that in my wine.
You know, on my level, I do like a little grassiness. I love high acidity in my Sauvignon Blancs. I'm not a big grapefruit guy. I don't mind a little grapefruit pith, but not the squeeze the grapefruit in your Sauvignon Blanc version of Kim Crawford. Sorry, Kim.
Yeah, well.
That's a guy, by the way.
It is?
Right? Yes.
Ah. Well, I probably should quit calling him Kimmy then. Oh well.
Yeah, well, Kim, he probably is. I'm sure somebody else calls him Kim.
Yeah, he lives way over there and he's owned by a big guy.
So I'm getting a lot of melon and apple notes on the nose.
There's some nice apple in there.
White flower. Kind of perfumey.
Yeah. There's a little bit of grapefruit in there too, but it's not the carrying force there.
No, hardly. So let's give it a whirl. I don't know if it's ready or not, but here, I'll take care of it for you.
You got it?
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Yeah, I like it. Good acid on this. Good structure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very fresh. It tastes like you shredded a little bit of a steel barrel in there, which I like a lot.
Yeah, the stainless steel shavings really help.
Yeah, I bet they do. Now, how do you get them to where they don't show in the glass?
Oh, it's a little winemaking trick. We'll just leave it at that.
I've seen him use the magnet.
A lot of apple. Tastes like I just bit into a red delicious apple, maybe a little bit of Granny Smith.
There's a lot of malic in this one. So the fruit was picked. I try and pick my fruit a little bit earlier, I think, than a lot of other people do. So they've still got a lot of fresh flavors, and you don't get that big overripe flavor.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of, and that's where I think you were commenting about. You didn't like a lot of the California Sauv Blancs because of that.
Well, they're flabby.
Well, they are.
They don't have an edge to them. They're just like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, like some of these wines, they charge $40 for a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc. Screaming Eagle, $250
For Sauvignon Blanc?
for a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, and only the wine club members get it, and they sell out of it. I don't get it. There's no Sauvignon Blanc. I don't think there's a Sauvignon Blanc out
For $250, I'm not going to get it either.
No, I'll never taste it unless Nick brings a bottle. I asked him to.
Yeah.
I like that wine. It's good.
It is. It's
very good. It's very refreshing.
I haven't had one for a couple of days, so that extra age on it's really showing well.
You did good with that. Good one. You did good with that, considering that 2012 was fairly warm. They had, I guess, 100 days where they didn't have any precipitation.
That's easy to say. I'm not going to try to say it.
100 days, so it was really warm. A lot of these whites that are coming out of 2012, and I just read Sean Sullivan's report that a lot of these whites are being richer. I haven't ran into any that I thought were a lot richer yet, but I haven't tasted through a ton of 2012. This one hits the mark. Nice, refreshing.
Yeah.
Good job.
That's what it's supposed to be.
You got any oysters? Oh, sorry, Mike.
All vegan here at Mike's Cafe and Wine Bar.
Do you have any tofu oysters?
Actually, this pairs great with salads.
Okay.
Yeah.
You haven't even tried it yet.
I have too.
You tried the 2012 already?
Yes.
Okay. Good job. Okay, let's rinse. Now we're going to go on to the blend 105. Gordy's is not going to let me take care of it.
No, well, you know.
We see that bottle again, Stan? As you
Okay, hold it up there, Gordy. Tell him where to put it.
nicely.
Okay.
This is your chance
It's
to
a
say
2007. There you go.
2007.
7.
Good.
Blend 105.
So what's in there, Gordy? What's the blend?
I forget. No, it's you know, I forget now. I have to read it off the back.
That's it.
Because
Is it on the back side?
We're assuming, yes, this is close enough.
Okay,
after
read it off the back
it's
side.
crushed. Oh, no, it's close
You
enough
can
after
forgive them.
crushing.
105 different
Okay, so
grapes.
here's what we got.
It's 6 varieties.
Okay. Merlot, 49%,
Okay.
21% Cab, 14% Syrah, 10% Petit Verdot, 3% Cab Franc, and 3% Malbec.
Yeah.
There you go. The kitchen sink. Perfect.
Yeah. So
why do you still have 107? That's what I want. I mean, why do you still have 2007?
you got the last bottle right there.
So I mean, how
sold it all last
many
night.
cases is this?
Hey, we got to have this for the end.
Okay, how many cases did you produce?
This was about 500 cases.
Okay.
It's the largest amount of red wine that I make each year.
All right.
The 2007 vintage was a you know, it was, I think, the biggest amount. I'm actually starting to tail off a little bit on the blend 105. It came about one year because I had a few barrels that didn't play well with others, but when you put them together, it worked just fine.
All right.
And blend 105 was supposed to be a one-off. The name came from those 5 barrels, 3 Merlot, 2 Cab. And then, this is 2001, and then 2002 I started making Malbec. So I was playing around with the Malbec, trying to figure out how does this work, what does it do? Because I just went, Malbec, yeah, I'll buy some. You know, but then what do you use it for in blending, how does it taste by itself? And I found that like 5% worked really well with the 60-40 blend of Merlot Cab that I had. It was just easier to remember 60 parts Merlot, 40 parts Cab, 5 parts Malbec, 105, and it was supposed to be a one-off, and here we are, years later, still making blend 105.
Yeah, and you're being artistic now. You're getting a little artsy-fartsy there.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's see what this one smells like. You know, this has a, like, Worcestershire sauce thing going on, you know, it's like a soy sauce.
Yeah, I'm getting a little soy in there.
Yeah.
2007 was an interesting vintage. It was sort of a big twist in between kind of vintage. It wasn't warm like the 2008. It wasn't moderate as the 2006. 2006 we also had I think some other wintertime weather problems, if I recall. The 2007 was just sort of a good recovery year, made strong. You know, it was good grapes, solid wines, and they've been lasting a really long time in the bottle.
Cool. Yeah, I really like this one. Yeah. I get a little rustiness, a little rose petal. Currants for sure. Mm-hmm. Kind of like rust and rose petal ground into the currants. That soy sauce comes through. I noticed that on some of your reds you get that profile, and I think my conclusion to that is that, well, that's the kind of blends that Gordy likes. I mean, when you blend in wines, you're looking for a certain flavor profile, and I noticed that with Mike's wines. I noticed that with many winemakers, there's a definite personality trait that exists in all their wines.
Well, the other thing that's starting to show up in the 2007 and going forward is they started aging the wines longer in barrel. I have a lot of neutral barrels around the winery. Not a lot of new, in fact, no new wood ever in my winery. And kind of taking the cue from making Nebbiolo and seeing kind of historically how the wines, what am I thinking here, the Rioja area, where they typically age them 3 years in barrel, at least well into the third season. And it makes a more refined group of flavors to the wine. You don't have that kind of blast of young fruit that a lot of wines have. You have a more understated fruit, a more developed character to the wines, and I think quite a bit more refined wine in that regard.
Okay, well, let's see what we got. What I like about this wine is it's very smooth, but it's got good structure. I mean, it's got good weight, start to finish. Mm-hmm. You get just a tiny bit of chalkiness on the tannins on the end. Mm-hmm. A lot of cherry fruit. Of cherry fruit.
Well, that's that signature Washington Merlot thing coming through. I mean, that's how you pick Washington Merlot out of a crowd. Is if it has a lot of Luden's cough drop going on, then you know it's pretty much Washington Merlot. The other thing that I've always loved about this wine, and I like it when I put it together. I mean, this sounds like the kitchen sink, but it's not. This was 5 or 6 blending trials over a couple of months to try and get it all dialed in to the way it is. But I like how this starts with that signature Merlot thing going on. Mm-hmm. But then the Cab and the Petit Verdot kind of kick in, and it finishes almost like a Cab. Yeah. And you got that really, really long finish that's produced by the abundance of Petit Verdot in there. Mm-hmm. And then, Malbec is just, Malbec in a blend, it just sort of punches up the Merlot a tiny bit. And everything else just plays really quite nicely in there.
Yeah, very well made, good structure, very smooth. Mm-hmm. I might have to swallow that one.
I know, I did.
And at the very end, when you swallow it, it's interesting. You get a little bit of that tomato stem thing that hits you just a little bit, not a lot, for those of you afraid of herbaceous wines. It's just barely there. I also get a little bit of black licorice in there, which I really like in a wine. So now we're going to go and move on to the Chatter Creek Cellar Cat Red Columbia Valley Red Table Wine. And is it non-vintage?
It is a non-vintage.
Is that good, Mike?
It is good. Gordy, why is the difference in labels now between the first two and your new?
Well, the Cellar Cat's a label I actually had around for a long time, and a small Washington history lesson, if you will. For quite a long time, the wineries and distributors all had to do what they called post and hold. So each month you had to post on the Washington State Liquor Control Board's website what you were going to sell your wine for, except for retail. No one cared about retail. So if you had special projects for, say, a restaurant, like if you wanted came and approached me for a special blend, and then alluding to Mike over there behind the camera. You couldn't, you know, you couldn't take a regular wine and discount it or something, but I could take Cellar Cap, and if Mike wanted to, you know, or you, if you wanted to pile in for a whole pallet of the stuff, well then I could take Cellar Cap, slap it on something else, and sell it to you at a posted price.
Gotcha.
So it really allowed me to cut special deals with restaurants or stores or something. It was a workaround with the post and hold. And now what it is for a few years now, I've been actually using this in the tasting room. I've garnered a following of people who just know it's there, it's cheap. It allows me, if I have to make a glass change at the end of a run, to, you know, okay, here's 14 cases of Cellar Cap. You don't know what it is, it doesn't matter, it's good.
So we forgot to mention the price on the Chatter Creek 105 was at 17 bucks, right?
Yeah.
I got it rolling a little cheaper at King's because we got a good deal, because we just about bought a little pallet of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chatter Creek goes at what?
I think that's for $14.
Okay.
Yeah.
14 bucks, so it's a value play,
Mm-hmm.
cash crop, cash cow.
Yeah.
What was this Sauvignon Blanc? I don't remember. I heard
17
that.
bucks.
17 as well.
Would you listen, please? I'm tired of your voice interjecting.
I'm just making sure that
pay
everyone heard
attention.
you, Stan.
Pay attention, Mike.
Just rewind it right now.
Review
no,
the
no,
tape
this is
earlier
live,
and you'll
it's doing
notice
live.
who's correct.
Yeah.
Anybody got a pea shooter? Can we shoot him when he starts talking too much? So this is cold. We just got it. The sales rep, Annalisa, just brought this out of her car, which is interesting because it smells like a rubber boot right now. There's a lot of petroleum on the nose, which I didn't get as much of. There was a little bit on the warmer bottle I tried, but this one definitely has it.
This particular bottling has Syrah and Mourvedre for the two big players in it.
Okay, that makes sense.
60%, there's 58% Syrah and 40% Mourvedre, and a little bit of Viognier came along with the Syrah.
That's what's punching up those aromas.
A little bit, yeah.
It always amazes me when they
British Cellar
blend a Syrah in a cab. You get that funky nose because that Syrah is trying to punch through the cab, which has more structure.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do a Syrah Merlot, because Merlot's a little less on the tannin side, it melds a little bit better. I always tell people
You can bring the weediness out in Merlot real fast, so you gotta be careful.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But yeah, cab Syrahs are amazing because I know they turn some people off when they first smell them. It gets really stinky. So mostly I'm just getting a little rubber boot, like tire action, which I don't mind. I like that.
Okay.
People are trying to get in there, seeing
see, we
these
got
bottles.
some- they're pounding at the window
We're
trying
not
to get
open until 4:30.
in. Some people, again, I get a little licorice on this. Dark fruits, really dark fruits. There's a huge amount of spice. I'm sure as this warms up, that spice comes through. Probably from the Mourvedre and the, well,
Yeah,
both Syrah
I love
and
Mourvedre.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I'm a Bandol junkie.
So Jancis Robinson told us that it's the official name is Monastrell because that's the oldest name for Mourvedre. It's the French who started calling it Mourvedre, but in Spain it's Monastrell. But I guess Monastrell was the original name for Mourvedre.
Well, I like calling it Mourvedre because I like saying Mourvedre.
Yeah.
It always reminds me, whenever I say that, I picture Morticia from the Addams Family.
Some of the earliest grapes in North America were Monastrell. In California, when the Spanish came around, they planted that for their early communion. So
Okay,
little
there you go. A little history lesson from the
There you
camera.
go.
play with it.
I like it.
So, excellent wines, Gordy.
Cellar Cat Red. The other fun little thing about that, the cat was drawn by my label designer's son. And he was about 8 at the time. And we had we used to have a cat, passed away at 18 here a couple of years ago. And it would come down when the winery was in the basement of my house. It would come down and it would sit between the barrels. Black cat sit between the lower barrels and kind of check things out to see if it was okay, and if she liked what was going on, then she'd wander out and and play select cat, pet me, pet me, pet me.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a picture that Aiden drew and showed to his dad. We were talking about calling it Cellar cat right anyway, and he said, "Oh, I drew a picture of the kitty sitting between the barrels." So that's Katie, our
picture of the
cat.
cat. You got it, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Good story. Love it. Love your wines. Excellent job. I'm glad you came, Gordy. That's awesome.
Well,
First guest on the show.
any excuse to come up to the Wands.
Yeah, why not? Beautiful spot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike, for being the cameraman today. You did a good job.
My pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to have an audience, so we can. It feels a little bit. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So here's to keeping the snob out of wine. By the way, these are a great value play for Washington wines. Cheers and ciao.